Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's episode of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. With me today is my very special guest, Dr. Khademian, the somewhat new executive director at the Universities of Shady Grove. Dr. Khademian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Senator. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So there are a lot of folks who don't know about USG, and they should, because it's a huge gift in Montgomery County and a hugely important educational institution. But let's share a little bit more about you first. So you got your bachelor's and your master's at Michigan State University, and then your PhD at Washington University, St. Louis. Why don't you talk about your educational journey and what inspired you to go into education?
Thank you so much for the chance to talk a little bit about Michigan State and that. When I was a senior in high school in a small town called Olivet, Michigan, about 350 people in the entire high school, so it was a very small school. We had a government teacher named Doug Weldon, who was a former prosecuting attorney from Kalamazoo, Michigan. And he taught the class in a somewhat radical way by doing mock debates and mock trials and mock elections. And it was just a blast. And to me, it just opened up the possibilities of how communities decide, how we make collective decision making. There was something so exhilarating and exciting about this public space and how we make things work in order to be representative, in order to be equal and fair, and how it didn't work sometimes, and sometimes how it worked really well. So I didn't know exactly what that meant in terms of a career, but I knew I wanted to study it more. And so when I went to Michigan State University, I was a political science major. And in the course of that major, discovered public organizations and organizational culture, and how these really complex organizations like the Detroit Housing Authority or the EPA, how they did really hard, complicated things with wonderfully talented people, very dedicated to what they were doing. But the role of culture, the role of mission, the role of leadership, all those questions are fascinating to me. It took me into getting my master's of public administration to learn more. And then when my husband and I were married, we met at Michigan State University. One of the great things about being at Michigan State is that I met my husband there. We went to St. Louis, and I then finished my PhD at Washington University in St. Louis in political science. So it was really a journey of trying to learn more about this collective effort, whether it's organizations or whether it's in the public square or in elections. I was just fascinated by that collective decision-making challenge and how we can make that process more inclusive, more representative, full of leadership in that.
Phenomenal. And thank you for giving the shout out to Doug Weldon, because we need to appreciate the teachers who inspired us and caused us to go into this crazy life. So I'm going to say yay to Dr. Richard Bourne at Vassar, without whom I would never have considered a political career. You spent 17 years at Virginia Tech. Why don't you talk about your work there? But frankly, why don't you talk about the impact and the campus culture following the shootings?
Oh, wow. Yeah, Virginia Tech is a wonderful place. And, we talk about the Hokie community and the Hokie spirit at Virginia Tech. It is a very deeply connected community. And my work was primarily up in the National Capital Region. So I was based in Alexandria and Arlington. One of the jobs I did when I was there was I was director of the School of Public and International Affairs.
Yes.
And we had students in Alexandria, we had students in Blacksburg, we had students in Richmond. And so we had 3 campuses going in that sense. Loved being there. It was a great place for me to grow and develop and have all kinds of opportunities as an academic, as a scholar, as an administrator. Wonderful colleagues. I love the pro sem spirit of, that I may serve. That's what drove the work at Virginia Tech. And that was really important when the tragedy happened, the mass shooting happened back in 2007 as well. I was not on campus that day. I was up, was on a Zoom call with, or I guess at the time it wasn't Zoom, it was another video conference call.
Yes.
But the consequences of that day were just so tragic and so impactful. And to this day, the campus still reconvenes on that day in a memorable way. There's a beautiful memorial tribute that is right at the center of campus, in front of Bascom Hall, that has all of the names of the people who lost their lives that day.
Yes.
And it's a very solemn occasion, but it's also an occasion when everybody reconnects and remembers the importance of community. I mean, people from all over the world reached out during that time, and you could feel the kind of Hokie spirit and Hokie connection. I think for the university, not only was it it was a tragedy that was so hard to get through, but it was also a time when there was a lot of community built, a lot of connections built, and the campus really dedicated itself to, never again should this happen, and really investing in counseling and in community health, and really investing in mitigation and risk assessment. And so there was a lot that was learned in that process by some wonderful leaders, presidents, who just saw all of us through that in a really helpful way. But very strong, powerful community there at Virginia Tech.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I want us to spend most of our Kibitz time talking about USG, but before we pivot, you've been the author of 3 books. Why don't you talk about writing a book and what that's like? And
it can be terrifying. It can be terrifying to write a book. I will tell you that, I signed a contract one time before my 3rd book, promising to deliver a manuscript. And that was like, oh my gosh.
Now it's real.
I've got to do this. But what a joy to write a book. I mean, the 3 books that I've written have been, it may not be of a lot of interest to the general public, but they were things that I was really interested in,
Right.
So how does an organization deal with Congress and deliver on its mission, and so the first book was about the Securities and Exchange Commission and its relationship with Congress. So kind of an esoteric agency, but fascinating, really important mission. My next book was on banking and how the Federal Reserve and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the FDIC, how they all supervise banks and how their cultures influence the way they supervise banks, so these were topics that were areas I really wanted to learn a lot about, but mostly I was very interested in how, again, these vehicles, right, these organizations, how they work together, their culture, in order to do this complicated job. And then out of those 2 books came my strong interest in just organizational culture.
So now that brings us to USG, which is just the perfect, and it's clear that your background has suited you so beautifully for the needs of this campus. So USG, Universities at Shady Grove, has been around. It was sort of classes started in the early 90s, but it officially became a campus in 2000. And and then I'm going to toss it to you, but 80-degree programs, 9 different universities, all on one campus in Montgomery County. It's such an impressive program and series of programs. So why don't you start by talking about the history and the current attributes of USG?
Thank you. Yeah, the history is, you covered the history really well. It's Montgomery County does not have a 4-year accrediting institution. And so, but we do have this wonderful community college, Montgomery College. It's a fantastic stellar institution. And so the challenge was, how do we build on, this wonderful institution and address the 4-year degree challenge? And Shady Grove was a solution to that by saying, let's have students, go to Montgomery College and then transfer into one of the many programs at USG to finish their bachelor's degree. So it's a 2+2 program. But I think the most important thing about Shady Grove is not only that innovative model that brings 9 universities there, but it's about access, affordability, equity, and aligning educational opportunities with workforce development needs and with economic development needs. I think those are cornerstones of what USG is all about. And as we go forward, we want to do that in an even bigger way, more equitable, more affordable, more accessible, and more aligned with the needs of the community, and really focusing on making sure that every student leaving a degree program at USG has a meaningful career path that they are on. And really ensuring that. So that's kind of the essence. And our strategic plan is taking us really into that. How do we build pathways to those meaningful careers and beyond? So really thinking about lifelong learning.
So let's talk about pathways in actually a literal sense. It used to be when I was on the Chancellor's Board of Advisors and was first connected to USG, there was one building. And then there were pathways built to building 2 and now building 3. And so why don't you talk about the campus, what it literally offers and some of the aspects of what's there?
Yeah, absolutely. We have now a $185 million, 200,000 square foot building called the BSC, the Biomedical Sciences and Engineering Building. It's building 4, to use our code there.
Yes.
Beautiful, amazing buildings there, but building 4 really represents the future and where we're going, which is really focused on STEM, STEM education, health sciences.
So I try not to use acronyms. So I think folks know science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So just to make sure everybody is aware.
Absolutely. So, we are working with our partners, with our 9 university partners, we're working to fill that building with degrees in biotechnology, degrees in biology, degrees in engineering and embedded systems, dentistry, and oral health, pharmacy, really trying to grow those programs because there's such a huge demand and a huge need there. But, across the campus, we have a building 1, our first building is being renovated right now for the nursing program, which is growing like crazy. Of course, the demand is huge for nursing.
Yes.
So a wonderful program by UMB, University of Maryland, Baltimore, in nursing there. We've got dentistry programs, pharmacy programs, we have business programs, we have, in IT and cyber. And so we cover the gamut in that sense, the STEM area in engineering, life sciences, the health sciences, IT and cyber, some traditional social science areas and public service areas around teaching and psychology and social work and some of the behavioral health areas.
Catering, hospitality offered by UMES, University of Maryland Eastern Shore.
And construction management as well. So programs that really align beautifully with where the needs are growing. And, our challenge now is to scale and grow. Right now, we serve about 3,500 students at Shady Grove, about 2/3 of those undergrad, about 1/3 of them graduate students. We need, we should continue growing until we're at, 10,000 students, right? So I think we really need to grow to meet the demand, which is, in the next few years, more than 70% of the jobs in Montgomery County are going to need a 4-year degree.
Right.
So we need to be really translating interest and demand and motivation among our students into great careers.
And let's be clear, when you graduate from USG, you don't get a degree that says universities at Shady Grove. It's from your home campus, whether it's Towson or University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC or UMES. So why don't you talk about relationships with a home campus?
What a great question. So home campuses are, our partners are running whole campuses back in Baltimore, or back in, College Park, or in the Eastern Shore. And so, but they bring their programs to Shady Grove. And so it is really a wonderful relationship. They are, figuring out how to do innovative things in Montgomery County. And so sometimes the degree programs we're offering here are not offered on the home campus because they're kind of cutting edge or experimental or doing something new here. I think as we move forward, we need to work with our partners to start doing more holistic planning for, the pathway experience of a student, and thinking about how we fill pathways with degree programs, and focusing less on developing a degree program and focusing more on how a degree program meets a pathway need in the county, right? So our relationships are going to need to change a little bit in terms of how we plan together, how we work together, and how we use the campus as a real innovation hub for higher education. It's time to do some real changes,
So I love that your background is about intersections, and you keep talking about pathways and about structures, and all of that is just really visual to me. So first question is, can students use kind of, the Chinese menu of one from column A, one from column B? Can they cross-pollinate and maybe they get their degree from one institution, but can they take courses from other institutions at
So
USG?
there's some of that happens, but I think not enough of that happens.
Okay.
So I'd love to get to a point where we have stackable credentials, right?
Yeah.
Where students can take a certificate, different credentials, and stack them together, and they have a degree.
Nice.
But we are still a bit articulated across the different institutions, a little bit siloed across the different institutions. There have been, there are cases where a course is shared or some other things are shared, but we really need to get to that point where students do have more opportunity and more choice, and can do a little bit more thinking about this. One of the areas that we've been having a conversation around this is in entrepreneurship. So for example, Bowie State University is bringing this wonderful certificate in entrepreneurship. We have a course in entrepreneurship offered by College Park as well. How can we use that certificate in entrepreneurship? It's a Bowie State certificate, but can we interchange some courses from different universities so that all students have access to the entrepreneurial mindset and the entrepreneurial thinking,
Yes.
And can use it as a credential towards their professional experience.
So I think we ought to give a shout out to the David and Michael Blair Foundation for creating and underwriting the entrepreneurship program and lab. And you all just announced social impact fellows out of that program. So why don't you talk briefly about that? Because that is one of the coolest hallmarks of the University System of Maryland is the Do Good program and the Make a Difference. And so why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I think the Social Impact Fellows originates with the Entrepreneurship Center at College Park, and I think they're the ones doing a lot of this in some of the public policy programs there as well. We are building with them on this idea. We're really focused on the social equity lab and the impact of social entrepreneurship more generally, and so the work that we're doing in the lab for entrepreneurship and transformational leadership, which you noted was made possible by a donation by the Blair Foundation. This lab we're really focusing on social entrepreneurship. That's where our key focus is. And how can we take the idea of the entrepreneurial mindset? It's not just about business and making money. It's about making an impact, having an impact in a very creative kind of way. So our social equity lab, our equity incubator, which we did last year and we're trying to grow now dramatically, offers an experience, a place in an incubator to underrepresented entrepreneurs. So women or people of color who have limited access to capital, they get to participate in this incubator. They get support for their ideas, whether it's a nonprofit or a product, or whatever it may be. And when they graduate, there's a big contest and there's seed money that goes to the winner. We're trying to grow that dramatically. Imagine the impact of, say, 200 people going through that incubator with their ideas and their organizations and doing the work right here in Montgomery County. And
their passion for making a difference. It's amazing. So I have so many questions for you. I'm not even sure which order to ask them. Let's talk about affordability. So rather than, a student who grew up in Gaithersburg or something, rather than needing to pay for a dorm room or commuting or something, they can live at home. They can work full-time or part-time, maybe raise a child or something, or raise a family and go to classes. Talk about that. 52% of the students get some sort of scholarship. Talk about it. Yeah.
And a big chunk of our students graduate debt-free as well. So
that's amazing.
If you go to Montgomery College and you're a resident of Montgomery County, it's extremely affordable. And then if you transfer into one of the programs at Shady Grove, you're paying tuition, you're not paying room and board, as you noted. There's some fees as well, but not only can you apply for financial aid from your home institution, so from College Park or UMBC, but Shady Grove also provides financial assistance as well. And so the degree becomes very, very affordable. And as I said, I think the number is about 56% of our students graduate debt-free. I'd like that to be 100%. I think every student ought to have a mentor. Every student ought to have an interview. Every student ought to have an experiential learning opportunity. Every student ought to have the IT they need, and every student ought to graduate debt-free. So if we could get there, I know it's a big,
that's big.
Thing, but we need to be thinking big like that.
That's amazing. And I have to say here that a lot of legislators, or I'll speak about myself, I also give senatorial scholarships, and we give away tens of thousands of dollars. And not only does it go to students who go to school in Maryland, but I give bonus amounts if they go to Montgomery College or USG, because that means they are really pinching their pennies and staying local and have the need. So that is something
Wonderful.
that we do.
Fantastic.
So talk about partnerships in the community. Every time I tour a high-tech business in Gaithersburg or in Rockville, I always ask about hiring and where they hire, how they mentor, and what sort of internship or other opportunities there are. And I always ask about USG. Talk about how you build those pathways.
Yeah, I mean, this is work that is ongoing and needs to really scale and grow as well. So, our business partners, they can serve as mentors. They provide internships. They provide of course, job opportunities. We want to get to the point where they're also working with us on academic planning and thinking about the skill sets that are needed and where to go. We want to get to the point where businesses are making annual donations, maybe to pathways for scholarships for all students. We have a number of businesses who do that.
Yes.
So those partnerships are crucial. And I think there's been for too long in academia and business, there's been a bit of a divide where academics are kind of like, this is the purity of what we do. And this is, it's like, we're protecting this, and it's really important. Like, it's a really special role that they're playing. And business is like, what's going on? How come we're not getting more people? We need. And so I think there's an opportunity to think more together, build more trust, and do some collective thinking in ways that will serve our students better. I think if we center the student and the need for students to have access and opportunity and great jobs at the end, I think that we can do much better in how we partner with business. So part of our new strategic plan, USG 2.0, is that deeper business engagement and how we work going forward.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say business and nonprofits, actually, because that's what I do. Is people sometimes just focus on business, but between 10 and 15% of our workforce and our economy is in the nonprofit sector. So talk about the Chancellor's Board of Advisors, because that has, again, I was honored to serve on it for many years, and those have been important partners, whether it's financial donations or guidance or advocacy in Annapolis, whatever. Why don't you talk about that and the sorts of people who serve on that board?
Yeah, we have an amazing board of advisors at Shady Grove. When I first came on to this job, and one of the first opportunities I had, it was on Zoom, but one of the first opportunities I had was to join a board of advisors meeting, and I was just blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, 35, 36 people, all dedicated, super dedicated to Shady Grove, super dedicated to the mission, and all in remarkable leadership positions across the county, in business, in government, in elected office, in appointed office, in nonprofits, lawyers, just a remarkable group of people, but very much representing the commitment of Montgomery County to education, to equity, and to the work of Shady Grove. I will give a shout out to Shirley Brandman, who is our chair, our board chair.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's remarkable. She gives me so much of her time, and is so dedicated to the students and to the mission and to the partnerships. And our board of advisors right now is leading a big effort to have to really focus on STEM education and diversity, and some conferences and things around that as well. So they're a very active board, very representative of the passion and commitment of Montgomery County.
Fantastic. So speaking of diversity, the student body is super diverse and always has been. You have an annual international night, but I think you engage in different communities for folks to learn from each other and connect. So can you talk about, do you know the statistics off the top of your head? And then can you talk about language diversity? Because language access, I think, is critically important and under discussed too often.
Absolutely. So just in terms of demographics, about 25% of the students who attend Shady Grove as undergraduates are African American. About 25% of our students are Latinx. About 25% of our students are Asian American and Pacific Islander, and other groups as well. And then about 25% of our students are Anglo, so white. So it's an incredibly diverse representation. Our graduate student body is not quite as diverse, but it is also very diverse. And with that diversity, also we have a lot of international students who come to Shady Grove, and with that diversity comes a lot of language diversity as well. And so a number of our staff members have, speak different languages and multiple languages and provide that kind of access. I will say, to your point about language, that we need more of this, not only at Shady Grove, more diversity and more, it makes it more, the educational experience more accessible to have people across the pathway, in the community colleges, in the high schools, in the middle schools, who can share about opportunities and experiences in multiple languages. This is very important. And we've been blessed to have someone like Teresa White, who serves on our board. Just a, phenomenal educator from Montgomery County Public Schools. She's an emeritus member of our board. I hope she continues to serve for years to come. Forever. We need Teresa. But she has been phenomenal in reaching students for whom, for example, Spanish is their first language, and bringing them in, showing them the pathway and the possibilities. So a number of our students are Teresa students, because they started with, connecting with Teresa and then working their way through the pathway. So yes, absolutely. Language diversity is essential to more accessible educational opportunities. Absolutely.
Do you think the home campuses understand the diversity of Montgomery County? Like, do you think they really get it? Because in a lot of places around the state, and I'm not just talking about race and ethnicity, but really the language barriers are enormous if they're not tended to.
I think that in general, I don't know if the home campuses per se, but in general, I think there's a lot of misperceptions about Montgomery County at the state level.
No question.
That Montgomery County is this really wealthy county, and that everybody is, everyone's sending their kids away to, far off colleges and all of that. That is the wrong perception. We are increasingly a majority minority county, and very, very diverse. And so I think there's, a kind of deeper understanding of Montgomery County is something that we need to share more. And I think this is such an opportunity and such a wonderful possibility that here we sit in Montgomery County with this incredibly rich, diverse community. And we have USG, which is one of the most unique educational experiments in the world. And we can be the hub of innovation for the future of higher education. We don't want to be a traditional campus. People say, oh, don't you want to be I say, no. People oftentimes say, don't you want the title of president? I say, no, I do not, because we are not a traditional campus. We are this innovation hub that can really show the way of how to serve non-traditional students, students who work, students who have families, students who are first in their family, students who have jobs, first in their family to go to college. We can be a model for how to serve these amazing, wonderful, dedicated, driven students who just have very different, complicated lives than a traditional student who is going to a campus for 4 years. And Cheryl, 74% of the students in higher education today are non-traditional students. And yet we still think about higher education in a very traditional way. So Shady Grove, with our county population, with the possibilities, with the commitment of leaders across the county, with the unique educational model that we have, and with our partners at Montgomery College and MCPS, we can do some transformative things. Coming out of the pandemic, like, now is the time to do the big paradigm shifting, and we hope to be leading some of that work.
So let's talk briefly about COVID. I'd like to think it's in the rearview mirror, even though we know it's kind of not going to be, or isn't yet, and may never be. You started in October of 2020, which was mid crazy parts of the coronavirus. What was your biggest challenge, and has it eased off? How are things now? We're taping now in May of 2022.
Yeah, it still continues to be a challenge just because of the uncertainty. When will it spike again? What does that mean? We work with 9 university partners to set parameters for public, for safety on campus and all of that as well. So it's an interesting, complex, set of circumstances to do that. I mean, just really worried about the student safety and staff safety. That has been the biggest challenge. And then the mental health of everybody, as well, that, the kind of isolation, the challenges, the uncertainty, the stress of caring for, people at home, both who are ill and students who are trying to take classes online. And, our students, we had students using the parking garage in the middle of winter to access the Wi-Fi because they didn't have Wi-Fi at home. We had students facing tremendous food insecurity. So we started whole programs. We did a lot of fundraising. Our advancement team and our board of advisors led an effort to really raise emergency funds for, for food cards and, a special pantry to
Yes.
support students through this time. And so, really the biggest challenge was just everybody's well-being, everybody's, mental and physical health. And, we are coming back on campus, but it's different. It's different. I mean, everyone's excited to be back,
Yes.
but there is a kind of still a little bit of exhaustion, a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of anxiety. And we're going to have to figure out what that looks like in terms of how we deliver courses, how we're together as a community. What does community mean? How do we work together? And so we've got a lot of learning to do coming out of this. But again, that's an opportunity for innovation. It's an opportunity to do some really innovative things, I think.
Yes. So I'm worried that we're going to start running out of time, but I still have a lot of questions for you. So talk about, no, one more thing first. Let's wrap up on the campus. You don't want it to become a traditional campus. Talk about what you don't have yet that you might envision in your future in terms of capital construction or assets.
So as we work to implement USG 2.0, research, data analytics, and bringing the community together for broader decision-making is going to be really important. And I think down the road, right now, we've got a big building to fill. We have, 3 other beautiful buildings that we're—
Wait. Let's say lead building. Can we talk for just a brief second?
Yes.
Brag about the environmental consciousness.
Lead platinum.
Platinum. Yeah,
exquisite. I mean, if people haven't seen it, you need to come and see it.
Yeah.
It is an exquisite building. And I'm going to give a big shout out to our head of our facilities, Jane Briggs, who
Nice.
was just tenacious in making sure that we stayed the course with that as well. She's just amazing. But I can see down the road a major decision theater at Shady Grove where data analytics, decisions about pathways that integrate academic planning with business needs and priorities, with community wealth building, where we become a hub of how we collectively make some of these decisions in the best interest of our students in Montgomery County, using data visualization, using great analytics in order to really move the needle. And I think that type of facility, that type of operation could be an asset not only for USG and for our students and our partners, but for the whole county, I think, in a big way. So I see that as kind of in our future.
Okay, fantastic. I have a couple of quick questions and then we'll go to our Fast Five. Talk about your own video podcast. This is USG. Any tips?
Well, I'm taking tips from you right now. It's wonderful. We started it because I started in the middle of a pandemic and I needed to meet people. So it was a way to really build relationships that across the system, across the county. And so I just enjoy it. I will give a shout out to Steve Simon and to Doug Kenton, who are the 2 producers of that podcast, who make it all possible. I pretty much have to show up and talk. So they're awesome. But yeah, I love that podcast. It's a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Is there anything I haven't asked you about USG that you'd like to mention briefly?
We've talked about a lot, but I just an amazing team that cares deeply about the students that we serve and who have stuck it out through the pandemic and have really built the foundation that we are taking to the next level now. So
fantastic. Before we go to the Fast Five, you are a track star and are in the Michigan State Athletic Hall of Fame. Do you still run?
I jog from time to time. Mostly during the pandemic, I shifted to walking long distances in the morning. So I walk 3 to 5 miles every morning before the day starts. But yeah, that was the way I paid for school. That's how I went to college and ran cross country track and outdoor track as well. So
good for you. All right. Well, Dr. Ann Khademian, Executive Director of USG, Fast Five. Five quick questions for 5 quick answers to let folks know a little bit more about you. Question number 1, what advice would the adult Ann give to the childhood Ann? Well, what have you learned that you wish you knew when you were a kid?
Slow down sometimes and enjoy life. Don't always feel like you have to be driven to the next goal every single time.
That's great. Question 2, if you could have any host, host any guest at all you ever wanted on a podcast or some conversation like this, whom would you choose?
Oh, wow. This is going to sound really obscure, but the host of Complexity, which is the Santa Fe Institute's podcast, Michael Garfield, just a phenomenal thinker, and I would love to be able to spend some time talking with him.
Cool. I guess viewers are going to have to look him up and see what we learn. Question 3, what is a movie you've seen a bunch of times and just can never get tired of?
Knight's Tale.
Give us a sentence. What is that?
It's a story of a man he grows up. His father sends him off to support a knight who's a jouster, and lives in the jousting world. And when the knight passes away, he assumes his role and pretends to be a knight. And it's about his journey and of self-discovery and leadership, and eventually becoming a knight himself. So
okay, all right. Question 4. If neither money nor time nor COVID nor anything else were an object, where would you like to travel in the world?
I'd like to go to Iran, my husband's hometown of Shiraz.
Nice. Okay. And the last question, Dr. Ann Khademian, what is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent you have, something most folks can't do?
Well, I don't know if most folks can't do it, but I think I'm an optimistic dreamer. And I think that's what carries me through most days.
Beautiful. Well, that's great. What a pleasure to finally get to kibitz with you. You have been on my prospect list for a really long time, and it's just great to get to know you some. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do. And I look forward to seeing you in person before too long.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I'm really appreciative of your interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.